She sat straight up in bed, and her heart beat fast. She certainly heard sleigh bells. The sound penetrated even to the dark bedroom. Then came a jarring pounding on the side door.
Fast asleep.
Welcome to Fast Asleep with Gina Marie. Welcome to all our dear friends. And if you're a first-timer, we're so glad you found us. I'm Gina, and our little family-run podcast is a bit of a secret, you know. We have been sharing the classics for years. Hundreds of beautiful short stories are right here, ready for you to soothe your mind, calm your heart, and maybe even help you to drift off to sleep. And how about this for a bonus? Classic literature is not just relaxing. It engages your imagination. It expands your vocabulary, and it can even give your IQ a gentle lift. Not that our listeners would ever need that. So, what better time for a cozy escape than Thanksgiving time? Author Mary Wilkins Freeman knew that and was quite famous for her novels and short stories comfortably set in New England towns and countryside. As was always the case with Mrs. Freeman's works, today's story includes a strong female character, so let's take just a moment to get some background on Mary Wilkins Freeman before we meet today's and Mary's grandma, who may seem a little harsh on the outside, but her devotion and love for her granddaughter will become very clear. Mrs. Freeman did pretty well with her writing. She never failed to get the most from her fees and her royalties. Just a smart lady. Money had always been scarce for her when she was growing up. She was born in Randolph, Massachusetts in 1852, and her father found no success in business there, so he moved the family to Vermont, where Mary finished high school and returned to Massachusetts to attend Mount Holyoke College. She did well, but after only a year she found that it was just too uncomfortable to be away from her family, and she left. All was not perfect, though, at all, when she got back with the family. Her sister died, and her father's Vermont business failed. Now, the family was then forced to move into the servants' quarters of the town's minister because her mother was becoming his housekeeper. Mary took all this to heart, and she just never forgot that humiliation. So, a little time passed, and by 1883, both of her parents had died, and Mary was forced to move in with a friend. It was here that she began her very successful writing career. She first published short stories in Harper's New Monthly magazine, and she went on to publish 15 short story collections. She wrote essays, 14 novels, 3 plays, 3 volumes of poetry, and 8 children's books. Very impressive. It wasn't until 1902 that Miss Wilkins became Mrs. Freeman at the age of 49. There were quite a few happy years with her new husband, Dr. Charles Freeman, but he became a victim of addiction to alcohol and sleeping powders. And he also had a reputation for driving fast horses and womanizing. Mrs. Freeman had him committed to the New Jersey State Hospital for the Insane in Trenton. He died in 1923 and left a pretty good-sized fortune. to his chauffeur, and just $1 to Mary. Oh, she was fine. Don't worry about her. Mary Wilkins was awarded the William Dean Howells Gold Medal for Fiction by the American Academy of Letters. That was in 1926. The same year, she was inducted into the prestigious National Institute for Arts and Letters. She died in Metuchen, New Jersey, of a heart attack in 1930 at the age of 77. Well, are you ready now for 2 heartwarming Thanksgivings in one story? Published in 1892, tuck in everybody, for Anne Mary, Her 2 Thanksgivings. Grandma. What is it, child? You going to put that cupcake into the pan to bake now, Grandma? Yes, I guess so. It's beat 'bout enough. You ain't put in a mite of nutmeg, Grandma. The grandmother turned around to Anne Mary. Don't you be quite so anxious, said she, with sarcastic emphasis. I allers put in the nutmeg in cupcake the very last thing. I rather guess I shouldn't have put this cake into the oven without nutmeg. The old woman beat fiercely on the cake. She used her hand instead of a spoon, and she held the yellow mixing bowl poised on her hip under her arm. She was stout and rosy-faced. She had crinkly white hair, and she always wore a string of gold beads around her creasy neck. She never took off the gold beads except to put them under her pillow at night. She was so afraid of their being stolen. Old Mrs. Little had always been nervous about thieves, although none had ever troubled her. You may go into the pantry and bring out the nutmeg now, Anne Mary, said she, presently, with dignity. Anne Mary soberly slipped down from her chair and went. She realized that she had made a mistake. It was quite an understood thing for Anne Mary to have an eye upon her grandmother while she was cooking, to be sure that she put in everything that she should and nothing that she should not, for the old woman was absent-minded. But it had to be managed with great delicacy, and the corrections had to be quite irrefutable, or Anne Mary was reprimanded for her pains. When Anne Mary had deposited the nutmeg box and the grater at her grandmother's elbow, she took up her station again. She sat at the corner of the table in one of the high kitchen chairs. Her feet could not touch the floor, and they dangled uneasily in their stout leather shoes. But she never rested them on the chair round, nor even swung them by way of solace. Anne Mary's grandmother did not like to have her chair rounds all marked up by shoes, and swinging feet disturbed her while she was cooking. Anne Mary sat up grave and straight. She was a delicate, slender little girl, but she never stooped. She had an odd resemblance to her grandmother, a resemblance more of manner than of feature. She held back her narrow shoulders in the same determined way in which the old woman held her broad ones. She walked as she did, and spoke as she did. Mrs. Little was very proud of Anne Mary Evans. Anne Mary was her only daughter's child, and had lived with her grandmother ever since she was a baby. The child could not remember either her father or mother. She was so little when they died. Anne Mary was delicate, so she did not go to the village to the public school. Miss Loretta Adams, a young lady who lived in the neighborhood, gave her lessons. Loretta had graduated in a beautiful white muslin dress at the high school over in the village. And Anne Mary had a great respect and admiration for her. Loretta had a parlor organ and could play on it, and she was going to give Anne Mary lessons after Thanksgiving. Just now, there was a vacation. Loretta had gone to Boston to spend 2 weeks with her cousin. Anne Mary was all in brown, a brown calico dress and a brown calico long-sleeved apron, and her brown hair was braided in 2 tight little tails that were tied with some old brown bonnet strings of Mrs. Little's and flared out stiffly behind the ears. Once, when Anne Mary was at her house, Loretta Adams had taken it upon herself to comb out the tight braids and set the hair flowing in a fluffy mass over the shoulders. But when Anne Mary came home, her grandmother was properly indignant. She seized her and rebraided the tails with stout and painful jerks. "I ain't going to have Loretta Adams meddling with your hair," said she, "and she can just understand it. If she wants to have her own hair all in a frowsle and look like a wild Injun, well, she can. You shan't." And Anne Mary, standing before her grandmother, with head meekly bent and watery eyes, decided that she would have to tell Loretta that she mustn't touch the braids if she proposed it again. That morning, while Mrs. Little was making the pies and the cake and the pudding, Anne Mary was sitting idle, for her part of the Thanksgiving cooking was done. She had worked so fast the day before and early that morning that she had the raisins all picked over and seeded, and the apples pared and sliced, and that was about all that her grandmother thought she could do. Anne Mary herself was of a different opinion. She was 12 years old, if she was small for her age, and she considered herself quite capable of making pies and cupcake. However, it was something to sit there at the table and have that covert sense of superintending her grandmother, and to be reasonably sure that some of the food would have a strange flavor were it not for her vigilance. Mrs. Little's mince pies had all been baked the day before. Today, as she said, she was making apple and squash. While the apple pies were in progress, Anne Mary watched her narrowly. Her small folded hands twitched, and her little neck seemed to elongate above her apron. But she waited until her grandmother took up an upper crust, and was just about to lay it over a pie. And then she spoke up suddenly. Her voice had a timid yet assertive chirp, like a bird's. "Grandma?" "Well, what is it, child?" "You going to put that crust on that pie now, Grandma?" Mrs. Little stood uneasily reflective. She eyed the pie sharply. "Yes, I be. Why?" she returned in a doubtful yet defiant manner. "You haven't put one bit of sugar in." "Oh, for the land's sake." Mrs. Little did not take correction of this kind happily, but when she was made to fairly acknowledge the need of it, she showed no resentment. She laid the upper crust back on the board and sweetened the pie. Aunt Mary watched her gravely, but she was inwardly complacent. After she had rescued the pudding from being baked without the plums, and it was nearly dinner time, her grandfather came home. He had been over to the village to buy the Thanksgiving turkey. Aunt Mary looked out with delight when he drove past the windows on his way to the barn. "Grandpa's got home," said she. It was snowing, quite hard, and she saw the old man and the steadily tramping white horse and the tilting wagon through a thick mist of falling snowflakes. Before Mr. Little came into the kitchen, his wife warned him to be sure to wipe all the snow from his feet and not to track in any. So he stamped vigorously out in the shed, and then he entered with an air of pride. "There," said he, "what do you think of that for a turkey?" Mr. Little was generally slow and gentle in his ways, but today he was quite excited over the turkey. He held it up with considerable difficulty. He was a small old man, and the cords on his lean hands knotted. "It weighs a good 15 pound," said he, "and there wasn't a better one in the store. Atkins didn't have a very big lot on hand." "Well, I should think that was queer, the day before Thanksgiving," said Mrs. Little. She was examining the turkey critically. "I guess it'll do," she declared, finally. That was her highest expression of approbation. "Well, I rather thought you'd think so," rejoined the old man, beaming. "I guess it's about as good a one as can be got. They said 'twas down there. Sam White was in there, and he said 'twas. He said I was going to get it in pretty good season for Thanksgiving, he thought." "I don't think it's such very extra season, the day before Thanksgiving," said Mrs. Little. "Well, I don't think 'twas nother. I didn't see just what Sam meant by it." Aunt Mary was dumb with admiration. When the turkey was laid on the broad shelf in the pantry, she went and gazed upon it. In the afternoon, there was great enjoyment seeing it stuffed and made ready for the oven. Indeed, this day was throughout one of great enjoyment, being full of the very aroma of festivity and good cheer and gala times, and even sweeter than the occasion which it preceded. Aunt Mary had only one damper all day, and that was the non-arrival of a letter. Mrs. Little had invited her son and his family to spend Thanksgiving, but now they probably were not coming, since not a word in reply had been received. When Mr. Little said there was no letter in the post office, Aunt Mary's face fell. "Oh, dear," said she. "Don't you suppose Lucy will come, Grandma?" "No," replied her grandmother, "I don't. Edward never did such a thing as not to send me word when he was comin' in his life, nor Maria neither. I ain't no idea when they'll come." "Oh, dear," said Aunt Mary again. "Well, now, you'll have to make up your mind to it," returned her grandmother. She was sore over her own disappointment, and so was irascible towards Aunt Mary's. "It's no worse for you than for the rest of us. I guess you can keep one Thanksgiving without Lucy." For a while, it almost seemed to Aunt Mary that she could not. Lucy was her only cousin. She loved Lucy dearly, and she was lonesome for another little girl. Nobody knew how she had counted upon seeing her cousin. Anne Mary herself had a forlorn hope that Lucy still might come, even if Uncle Edward was always so particular about sending word, and no word had been received. Why, on Thanksgiving morning she kept running to the window and looking down the road. But when the stage from the village came, it passed right by the house without slackening its speed. And then there was no hope left at all. "Oh, you might just as well be easy," said her grandmother. "I guess you can have a good Thanksgiving if Lucy ain't here. This evening you can ask Loretty to come over a little while if you want to, and why, you can make some nut candy." "Loretta ain't at home." "Oh, she'll come home for Thanksgiving, I guess. It ain't very likely she's stayed away over that. Now, when I get the dinner ready to take up, you can carry a plateful down to Sarah Bean's, and that'll be something for you to do, too. I guess you can manage." Thanksgiving Day was a very pleasant day, although there was considerable snow on the ground, for it had snowed all the day before. Mr. Little and Anne Mary did not go to church as usual on that account. The old man did not like to drive to the village before the roads were beaten out. Mrs. Little lamented not a little over it. It was the custom for her husband and granddaughter to attend church Thanksgiving morning, while she stayed at home and cooked the dinner. "Oh, it does seem dreadful heathenish for nobody to go to meeting Thanksgiving Day," said she. "And we ain't even heard the proclamation read, neither. It rained so hard last Sabbath that we couldn't go." The season was unusually wintry and severe, and lately the family had been prevented from church going. It was 2 Sundays since any of the family had gone. The village was 3 miles away, and the road was rough. Mr. Little was too old to drive over it in very bad weather. When Anne Mary went to carry the plate of Thanksgiving dinner to Sarah Bean, she wore a pair of her grandfather's blue woolen socks drawn over her shoes to keep out the snow. The snow was rather deep for easy walking, but she did not mind that. She carried the dinner with great care. There was a large plate, well filled, and a tin dish was turned over it to keep it warm. Now, Sarah Bean was an old woman who lived alone. Her house was about 1/4 of a mile from the Littles. When Anne Mary reached the house, she found the old woman making a cup of tea. There did not seem to be much of anything but tea and bread and butter for her dinner. She was very deaf and infirm. All her joints shook when she tried to use them, and her voice quavered when she talked. She took the plate, and her hands trembled so that the tin dish played on the plate like a clapper. "Why," said she, overjoyed, "why, this looks just like Thanksgiving Day. You tell your grandma." "Why, it is Thanksgiving Day," declared Anne Mary, with some wonder. "What?" asked Sarah Bean. "It is Thanksgiving Day, you know." But it was of no use. The old woman could not hear a word. Anne Mary's voice was too low. Anne Mary could not walk very fast on account of the snow. She was absent some 3/4 of an hour. Her grandmother had told her that dinner would be all on the table when she returned. She was enjoying the nice things in anticipation all the way. When she came near the house, she could smell roasted turkey, and there was also a sweet, spicy odor in the air. She noticed with surprise that a sleigh had been in the yard. "Why, I wonder who's come," she said to herself. She thought of Lucy, and whether they could have driven over from the village. She ran in. "Why, who's come?" she cried out. Her voice sounded like a shout in her own ears. It seemed to awaken echoes. She fairly startled herself, for there was no one in the room. There was absolute quiet through all the house. There was even no sizzling from the kettles on the stove, for everything had been dished up. The vegetables, all salted and peppered and buttered, were on the table, but the turkey was not there. In the great vacant place where the turkey should have been was a piece of white paper. Stay with me. I'll be right back. In the great vacant place where the turkey should have been was a piece of white paper. Aunt Mary spied it in a moment. She caught it up and looked at it. It was a note from her grandmother. "We have had word that Aunt Betsy has had a bad turn. Liz wants us to come. Now the dinner is all ready for you. If we ain't home tonight, you can get Loretti to stay with you. Be a good girl. Grandma." Aunt Mary read the note and stood reflecting, her mouth drooping at the corners. Aunt Betsy was Mrs. Little's sister. Liz was her daughter, who lived with her and took care of her. They lived in Derby, and Derby was 14 miles away. It seemed a long distance to Aunt Mary, and she felt sure that her grandparents could not come home that night. She looked around the empty room and sighed. After a while she sat down and pulled off the snowy socks. She thought she might as well eat her dinner, although she did not feel so hungry as she had expected. Everything was on the table but the turkey and plum pudding. Aunt Mary supposed these were in the oven, keeping warm. The door was ajar, but when she looked, they were not there. She went into the pantry. They were not there either. It was very strange. There was the dripping pan in which the turkey had been baked on the back of the stove with some gravy in it. And there was the empty pudding dish on the hearth. "What has Grandma done with the turkey and the plum pudding?" said Aunt Mary aloud. She looked again in the pantry. Then she went down to the cellar. There seemed to be so few places in the house in which it was reasonable to search for a turkey and a plum pudding. Finally, she gave it up and sat down to dinner. There was plenty of squash and potatoes and turnips and onions and beets and cranberry sauce and pies. But it was no Thanksgiving dinner without turkey and plum pudding. It was like a great flourish of accompaniment without any song. Aunt Mary did as well as she could. She put some turkey gravy on her potato and filled up her plate with vegetables. But she did not enjoy the dinner. She felt more and more lonely, too. She resolved that after she had washed up the dinner dishes and changed her dress, she would go over to Loretta Adams. It was quite a piece of work washing the dinner dishes. There were so many pans and kettles. It was the middle of the afternoon when she finished. Then Aunt Mary put on her best plaid dress and tied her best red ribbons on her braids, and it was 4 o'clock before she started for Loretta's. Loretta lived in a white cottage about half a mile away, towards the village. The front yard had many bushes in it, and the front path was bordered with box. The bushes were now mounds of snow, and the box was indicated by 2 snowy ridges. The house had a shut-up look. The sitting-room curtains were down. Aunt Mary went around to the side door, but it was locked. Then she went up the front walk between the snowy ridges of box and tried the front door. That also was locked. The Adamses had gone away. Aunt Mary did not know what to do. The tears stood in her eyes, and she choked a little. She went back and forth between the 2 doors and shook and pounded. She peeked around the corner of the curtain into the sitting room. Oh, she could see Loretta's organ with the music book and all the familiar furniture, but the room wore an utterly deserted air. Finally, Aunt Mary sat down on the front doorstep after she'd brushed off the snow a little. She made up her mind to wait a little while and see if the folks would not come home. She had on her red hood and her grandmother's old plaid shawl. She pulled the shawl tightly around her and muffled her face in it. It was extremely cold weather for sitting on a doorstep. Just across the road was a low clump of birches. Through and above the birches, the sky showed red and clear where the sun was setting. Everything looked cold and bare and desolate to the little girl who was trying to keep Thanksgiving. Suddenly, she heard a little cry, and Loretta's white cat came around the corner of the house. "Kitty, kitty, kitty," called Aunt Mary. She was very fond of Loretta's cat. She had none of her own. The cat came close and brushed around Aunt Mary, so she took it up in her lap and wrapped the shawl around it and felt a little comforted. She sat there on the doorstep and held the cat until it was quite dusky, and she was very stiff with the cold. Then she put down the cat and prepared to go home. But she had not gone far along the road when she found out that the cat was following her. The little white creature floundered through the snow at her heels and mewed constantly. Sometimes it darted ahead and waited until she came up, but it did not seem willing to be carried in her arms. When Anne Mary reached her own house, the lonesome look of it sent a chill all over her. She was afraid to go in. She made up her mind to go down to Sarah Bean's and ask whether she could not stay all night there. So she kept on, and Loretta's white cat still followed her. There was no light in Sarah Bean's house. Anne Mary knocked and pounded, but it was of no use. The old woman had gone to bed, and she could not make her hear. Anne Mary turned about and went home. The tears were running down her cold red cheeks. The cat mewed louder than ever. When she got home, she took the cat up and carried it into the house. She determined to keep it for company anyway. She was sure now that she would have to stay alone all night. The Adamses and Sarah Bean were the only neighbors, and it was so late now that she had no hope of her grandparents' return. Anne Mary was timid and nervous, but she had a vein of philosophy, and she generally grasped the situation with all the strength she had when she became convinced that she must. She had laid her plans while walking home through the keen winter air, even as the tears were streaming over her cheeks, and she proceeded to carry them into execution. She gave Loretta's cat its supper, and she ate a piece of mince pie herself. Then she fixed the kitchen and sitting room fires and locked up the house very thoroughly. Next, she took the cat and the lamp and went into the dark bedroom and locked the door. Then she and the cat were as safe as she knew how to make them. The dark bedroom was in the very middle of the house, the center of a nest of rooms. It was small and square, had no windows, and only one door. It was a sort of fastness. Anne Mary made up her mind that she would not undress herself and that she would keep the lamp burning all night. She climbed into the big yellow posted bedstead, and the cat cuddled up to her and purred. Anne Mary lay in bed and stared at the white satin scrolls on the wallpaper and listened for noises. She heard a great many, but they were all mysterious and indefinable. Till about 10 o'clock. Then she sat straight up in bed, and her heart beat fast. She certainly heard sleigh bells. The sound penetrated even to the dark bedroom. Then came a jarring pounding on the side door. Anne Mary got up, unfastened the bedroom door, took the lamp, and stepped out into the sitting room. The pounding came again. "Anne Mary! Anne Mary!" cried a voice. It was her grandmother's. "I'm coming. I'm coming, Grandma," shouted Anne Mary. She had never felt so happy in her life. She pushed back the bolt of the side door with trembling haste. There stood her grandmother, all muffled up with a shawl over her head. And out in the yard were her grandfather and another man with a horse and sleigh. The men were turning the sleigh around.
"Put the lamp in the window, Anne Mary,"
called Mr. Little, and Anne Mary obeyed. Her grandmother sank into a chair.
"Oh, I'm just about tuckered out," she groaned. "If I don't catch my death with this day's work, I'm lucky. There ain't any more feeling in my feet than as if they were lumps of stone."
Anne Mary stood at her grandmother's elbow, and her face was all beaming. "I thought you weren't coming," said she.
"Well, I shouldn't have come a step tonight if it hadn't been for you. And the cow," said her grandmother in an indignant voice. "I was kind of uneasy about you, and we knew the cow wouldn't be milked unless you got Mr. Adams to come over."
"Was Aunt Betsy very sick?" inquired Anne Mary. Her grandmother gave her head a toss.
"Sick? No. There weren't a thing the matter with her except she ate some sausage meat and had a little faint turn. Liz was scared to death, the way she always is. She didn't act as if she knew whether her head was on all the time we were there, and she didn't act as if she knew it was Thanksgiving Day. And she didn't have no turkey that I could see neither. Aunt Betsy being took sick seemed to put everything out of her head. I never saw such a nervous thing as she is. I was all out of patience when I got there. Betsy didn't seem to be very bad off, and there, we'd hurried enough to break our necks. Oh, and we didn't dare to drive around to Sarah Bean's to let you know about it, for we was afraid we'd miss the train. We just got in with the man that brought the word, and he driv as fast as he could over to the village. And then we lost the train and had to sit there in the depot 2 mortal hours. And now we've come 14 mile in an open sleigh. The man that lives next door to Betsy said he'd bring us home, and I thought we'd better come. He's going over to the village tonight. He's got folks there. I told him he's a good deal better stay right here, but he won't. He's as deaf as an adder, and you can't make him hear anything anyway. We ain't spoke a word all the way home. Now, where's Loretty? She came over to stay with you, didn't she?"
Anne Mary explained that Loretta was not at home.
"Well, now that's queer, seems to me. Thanksgiving Day," said her grandmother. "Oh, massy sakes, what cat's that? She came out of the settin' room."
Anne Mary explained about Loretta's cat. Then she burst forth with the question that had been uppermost in her mind ever since her grandmother came in. "Grandma," said she, "what did you do with the turkey and the plum pudding?"
"What?"
"What did you do with the turkey and the plum pudding?"
"The turkey and the plum pudding?"
"Yes, I couldn't find 'em anywhere." Mrs. Little, who had removed her wraps and was crouching over the kitchen stove with her feet in the oven, looked at Anne Mary with a dazed expression.
"I dunno what you mean, child," said she.
I want to do that last line again. The last thing that we're going to keep is with a dazed expression.
"I dunno what you mean, child," said she.
Mr. Little had helped the man with the sleigh to start, and now come in. He was pulling off his boots.
"Now don't you remember, Mother," said he, "how you run back in the house and said you was going to set that turkey and plum pudding away, for you was afraid to leave 'em setting right out in plain sight on the table, for fear that somebody might come in?"
"Oh, yes, I do remember," said Mrs. Little.
"I thought they looked most too tempting, so I set 'em in the pantry. I thought Anne Mary could get 'em when she came in."
"They ain't in the pantry," said Anne Mary. Her grandmother arose
and went into the pantry with a masterful air. "Ain't in the pantry," she repeated. "I don't suppose you gave more'n one look?" Anne Mary followed her grandmother. She fairly expected to see the turkey and pudding before her eyes on the shelf, and to admit that she'd been mistaken. Mr. Little also followed, and they all stood in the pantry and looked about. "I guess there ain't anything here, Mother," said Mr. Little. "Now can't you think where you set 'em?" The old woman took up the lamp and stepped out of the pantry with dignity. "I have set 'em somewhere," she said in a curt voice, "and I'll find 'em in the morning. You don't want any turkey or plum pudding tonight, neither of you." But Mrs. Little did not find the turkey and the plum pudding in the morning. Some days went by, and their whereabouts was as much a mystery as ever. Mrs. Little could not remember where she had put them, but it had been in some secure hiding place, since her own wit, which had placed them there, could not find it out. She was so mortified and worried about it that she was nearly ill. She tried to propound the theory, and believe in it herself, that she had really set the turkey and the pudding in the pantry and that they had been stolen. But she was too honest. "Well, I've heard of folks putting things in such safe places that they couldn't find 'em before now," said she. "But I never heard of losing a turkey and a plum pudding that way. I dunno but I'm losing what little wits I ever did have." She went about with a humble and resentful air. She promised Anne Mary that she would cook another turkey and pudding the first of the week, if the missing ones were not found. Sunday came, and they were not discovered. It was a pleasant day, and the Littles went to the village church. Anne Mary looked over across the church after they were seated and saw Loretta, with the pretty brown frizzes over her forehead, sitting between her father and mother. And she wondered when Loretta had come home. The choir sang and the minister prayed. Suddenly, Anne Mary saw him standing there in the pulpit as he unfolded a paper, and then the minister began to read the Thanksgiving proclamation. Anne Mary cast one queer glance at her grandmother, who returned it with one of inexpressible dignity and severity. As soon as the meeting was done, her grandmother clutched her by the arm. "Don't you say a word about it to anybody," she whispered. "You mind." And when they were in the sleigh going home, she charged her husband. "You mind. You keep still, father," said she. "It'll be town talk if you don't." The old man chuckled. "Now, don't you know, I said once that I had kind of an idea that Thanksgiving weren't quite so early, and you shut me up, Mother," he remarked. He looked good-naturedly malicious. "Well, I dunno as it's anything so very queer," said Mrs. Little. "It comes a whole week later than it did last year, and I suppose we missed hearing the proclamation." The next day, a letter arrived saying that Lucy and her father and mother were coming to spend Thanksgiving. "Oh, I feel just about beat," Mrs. Little said when she read the letter. Really, she did feel about at her wits' end. The turkey and pudding were not yet found, and she made up her mind that she would not dare wait much longer without providing more. She knew that another turkey must be procured at all events. However, she waited until the last minute Wednesday afternoon, and then she went to work mixing a pudding. Mr. Little had gone to the store for the turkey. Sam White was over there, and he said he thought we was going right into turkeys this year," he reported when he got home.
That night, the guests arrived. Thanksgiving morning, Lucy and Anne Mary and their grandfather and Lucy's father and mother were all going to meeting. Mrs. Little was to stay at home and cook the dinner. Thanksgiving morning, Mr. Little made a fire in the best parlor airtight stove, and just before they started for meeting, Lucy and Anne Mary were in the room. Lucy, in the big rocking chair that was opposite the sofa, was rocking to and fro and talking. Anne Mary sat near the window. Each of the little girls had on her coat and hat, and suddenly Lucy stopped rocking and looked intently over towards the sofa. "What are you looking at, Lucy?" asked Anne Mary, curiously.
Lucy still looked.
"Why, I was wondering what was under that sofa," said she, slowly. Then she turned to Anne Mary, and her face was quite pale and startled. She had heard the turkey and pudding story. "Oh, Anne Mary, it does look like... oh!" Both little girls rushed to the sofa and threw themselves on the floor. "Oh!" they shrieked. "Grandma, Mother, come quick, come quick!" When the others came in, there sat Anne Mary and Lucy on the floor, and between them were the turkey and the plum pudding, each carefully covered with a snow-white napkin. Mrs. Little was quite pale and trembling. "Oh, I remember now," said she faintly. "I run in here with them." She was so overcome that the others tried to take it quietly and not to laugh much. But every little while after Lucy and Anne Mary were seated in church, they would look at each other and have to put their handkerchiefs to their faces. However, Anne Mary tried hard to listen to the sermon and to behave well. In the depths of her childish heart, she felt grateful and happy. There, by her side, sat her dear Lucy, whose sweet little face peeped out from a furry winter hat. And just across the aisle was Loretta, who was coming in the evening, and then they would pop corn and make nut candy. At home, there was the beautiful new turkey and unlimited pudding and good cheer, and all disappointment and mystery were done away with. Anne Mary felt as if all her troubles would be followed by Thanksgivings. Introduction information for this episode is from the Annenberg Learner, an educational website at learner.org, and other sources in our show notes. Music for today is Eternal Play from Simo, Ballerina from Yehezkel Raz, Mosaic from Earthtone, Prayer from Patrick Usher, Paris from Daniel Robinson, and Ballerine O, also from Yehezkel Raz. Tell us about your Thanksgiving. right here in comments, or email us at fastasleepwithginamarie44@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Don't forget to review us, to comment, to like, and to subscribe. Fast Asleep with Gina Marie thanks you for listening. Keyword: sofa. And next week, Guy de Maupassant. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Good night.